Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. We're back with episode number 23 of the Unboxing AI webinar series every Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern, or depending on where you are in the world, 8:30 p.m. in India, where I am right now, and probably 8 a.m. for Cameron, who's our guest today. I anticipate no pressure, Cameron, that today is going to be one of the most exciting and hopefully controversial sessions ever. But before we get into that, or my marketing team will kill me. For those of you who don't know what CARPL is, we are your friendly neighborhood AI platform. We sit between you, a radiologist, a healthcare provider, an IT person, and this whole world of AI applications where there's hundreds of companies building beautiful products in for different niche use cases. We sit in the middle as a single user interface, single data channel, and single procurement channel, getting these solutions into your workflows. So marketing speak aside, today I'm very, very, very happy to have with me a dear friend, guide, somebody I really look up to, possibly the smartest person in the industry without uh, yeah, pissing off other people.
There are a
So
lot
Cam,
of smart people. It's like sending a comedian on stage saying, "Here's the funniest person in the world." Now everyone in the chat here just wants to crucify me. So thank you for that, Vidur. I love you dearly.
I think you're used to it, Cam.
Thanks.
So yeah, so for those of you who don't know Cameron is the CEO and founder of Sirona Medical. We'll let him talk about what Sirona does. I'll probably just screw it up, but I first met Cameron. We were in fact seeing the date of our first email exchange. It was 29th August 2019. So just over 5 years ago. Neither of us has aged even a bit in those 5 years. Yeah, so Cameron graduated from Stanford, started worked at a VC fund, and then started Sirona literally right out of college. And yeah, today they're closing multi-million dollar deals, if I may say so. and and
Only took 6 years, man. Only took 6 years and $100 million. So here we are.
I hope you have some of that in the bag still, Cam. So Cameron, we generally start off these webinars by me asking you a very simple question, like, what is it that you do?
Yeah.
And as if you're telling a 5-year-old adult.
Well, as the founder and CEO of the company, I follow around a lot of people who are way smarter than I am and try to help them out. But what does Sirona do? We build all the software that radiologists need to practice clinically. So viewing, reporting, the PAC system, underlying archiving, at work list, et cetera, and build it in a single unified cloud native platform. And the intention there has, you and I have spoken about and pontificated about in private for many years. Was really to try to solve one side of, I would say, the two-sided coin that CARPL and Sirona sort of both represent. On the one hand, there's how do we get AI into the clinical workflow, where that workflow is comprised of the sort of fragmented on-prem solutions that exist today. And that's where products like CARPL are critical in order to get and deliver sort of AI to customers where they're at. And then there was this sort of additional question of, on a 10-year basis, how do we ensure that software that radiologists use has been re-architected to be what we would describe as AI native. And that really represents, as we saw it, the need for two things: to bring all the data that radiologists use in order to practice. So that isn't just image data and report data and clinical data, but also the audio stream. And over time, eye tracking data and other really cool multimodal inputs on a 10-year basis. How do we bring all of these powerful sort of data streams into the same embedding space? As well as bring all the software that doctors use into the same place, so that AI can be made to do things for physicians that today, with the underlying fragmented IT stack, it just can't. And so I think really Sirona's purpose is to help accelerate the transition to AI-powered healthcare more broadly. We think that transition is going to happen in radiology first, since, well, for many reasons, but partially because radiologists practice entirely through software. And Sirona's purpose is to help give radiologists the modern technology platform necessary for AI to transform the practice of radiology over the next 10 years.
So Cameron, it's interesting because given your education, your experience, you could have chosen to do anything, pretty much. Why enter our our industry? Not the easiest on the planet, right? Not the most amenable to innovation.
Yeah.
Why as a, I don't even know how old you were, probably 23, 24, something like that, as like a
22 years old when I first
as
met
a
you.
22-year-old kid, why jump into our crazy world and try to fix it?
I reject the premise, Vidur. I would say that I am very much of this world because medicine is a hereditary disease and radiology is just the most infectious of those. And my granddad was a radiologist. He started a private practice in Minneapolis back in 1981, and grew that on a business plan that my mom wrote when she was in business school. And so I grew up around not just the practice of radiology, but very much sort of the business of building a practice. And and didn't want to be the apple that fell like directly onto the tree. So I did think that I was going to go do like my neuroscience PhD and not be on the clinical side of medicine. Um, but at the time, I fell in love with computer science as a toolkit to do some of this stuff that we were doing in the wet lab, some of the wet lab research I was doing at the time. And and when I asked some of my professors what the most exciting application of AI was in clinical medicine at the time, the answer was in radiology. And I fell in love with sort of computer vision, both algorithms and the research that was happening at the time, and got really excited about sort of the problem space generally. And very quickly came to realize that while the algorithmic problem, all circa 2000 and maybe 16, 17, 18, the years all blend together at this point. So somewhere in that range, it became clear that the algorithmic problem on the vision side was largely solved. But we had this massive sort of clinical divide, translational divide, that I think, and you and I have spoken about for many years, but we both saw, which is if there are so many FDA cleared algorithms, if there is such a simple development pathway to developing these, large sort of vision models at the time, why is it so difficult to translate these into valuable products in clinic? And largely we saw that problem is coming down to the fragmented and on-prem, and in many cases sort of stodgy nature of both the technology as well as the companies that were delivering that technology, that still today are the underpinnings of the radiology IT stack. And so I think that the reason that I decided to do this, even though it was statistically almost certain that the company would fail until now the opposite is true, but and that it would be, rebuilding healthcare IT system of record infrastructure in healthcare is about as uninvestable a proposition as exists, because selling stuff to physicians is really hard, and this cold start problem is extremely hard, and you have
Yeah,
to both be of the
I'm gonna
industry.
kind of interject there and go
Yeah,
off script for a bit.
yeah,
So I see as I scroll the list of attendees, there's a bunch of radiologists here from across the world. In fact,
yeah,
a lot of physicians as well. Uh, you said that it's incredibly hard to sell stuff to physicians. So for the physicians on the listening in right now, what is it that they can do to ensure that that statistical probability of startups trying to sell to physicians dying
yeah,
reduces, and
yeah.
there's an implicit incentive to kind of create more companies that sell to physicians and thereby have more products that make physicians faster, better, and in turn cheaper?
Yeah. The answer to this, I understand, is easier said than done, and it's really easy to spend other people's money. So I recognize that that's what I'm going to suggest. The honestly, the hard part of the problem is to go from zero paying customers to paying customers. And honestly, it doesn't even matter what people are paying. However, there is sort of philosophically an unwillingness for new customers to buy a product at a fair market rate unless they understand that there are customers of a similar size, caliber, complexity who are paying customers previous.
Mm.
And so I guess if I were to reframe the question and say, hey, Cam, if you were put in the position of being, a radiology practice leader, what is the single biggest bang for your buck that practice could create in order to accelerate innovation in the space writ large? And the short answer would be to put some de minimis sum of money aside, whatever de minimis means to you, and create contracts with new and innovative startups where when they deliver stuff, then you pay them. And even if the paying is so de minimis that like you don't actually end up fully adopting the solution across the whole practice, there is a real divide between venture capital who wants to fund innovative solutions, especially AI-powered solutions in healthcare, and their ability to assess the clinical value and the sort of broad value of solutions that are being built particularly for physicians. And so the ability for practices to sign binding contracts that tie performance and the delivery of certain things to dollar milestones, even if those dollars are small, that 0 to 1 problem being made 12, 24 months faster for businesses like ours, make it tens of millions of dollars cheaper to develop technology than technology that we're building. And
So what you
so
think is what your dream scenario is this openness to sign a long-term contract that ties whatever you get as a startup to some delivery metric that is truly valuable to the provider. So essentially what you're saying is pay me if you find commit to paying me if you find what I sell useful.
yes, but yes. However, the value of that piece of paper it extends far beyond or far earlier than when you actually start paying. Because the venture capital, like for all of the insanity that that industry can represent at moments, and how foreign some of that decision making may seem to people, especially in the medical field, who by nature are on a different part of the risk reward curve in their professional career than people putting $40 billion into stuff that was founded yesterday. Like that industry can feel super alien, but it's not complicated. If there is a market for something and the path from nothing to that something is really well defined, hey, we would buy this if you built X, Y, and Z. Whatever X, Y, and Z are, for most other industries, VCs are more naturally equipped to understand. In medicine, they absolutely know they are not. And so it's a difference between if you're raising an early stage venture financing round, being able to walk in and say, you, Mr. or Mrs. VC, don't have to understand our industry. Here's what has to be built. Here is the willingness to pay on the other side of it. And as a result of that, give us not small capital, not $1, $2, $3 million, which is what most of the AI businesses in our space have to deal with. Give me 50.
Yeah.
And there is this tale of sort of two cities that exists in both the AI and the innovation industry and radiology more broadly, which is there are many people who have very little capital, and there are a handful of people who have all the capital, and there should be stuff in between. It shouldn't be that binary. It's not good for the industry, and it represents, candidly, the ability for folks like me and folks like you who are in the industry to use the personal trust that we have garnered in the industry as a whole to get folks to sign pieces of paper like that, even if the average sort of, I'll say for myself, you said I'm smart, but like there are people who are way smarter. There are way smarter people than me who failed in trying to get those pieces of paper in the early days signed. And they did so not because they weren't smarter or more capable or more well positioned, but because they weren't better trusted by the industry implicitly ahead of time. And I think we're
So
doing
Cameron, taking that then a couple of steps further, let's say that happens, right? Let's say there's an openness to sign such contracts, and please, for folks on the call, please feel free to ask questions about this. Cameron and I can go on quite a tangent, so feel free to ask clarifying questions, whatever, anything that comes to mind. But so Cam, let's say this happens, right? Let's say there's it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but let's say 20% of practices embrace this, let's call it the tied economics reimbursement model or something like that, where they agree to pay you for the value that you deliver, or in case you deliver value. What does the future then look like? Right? Like 5, 7, 10 years from today, I'm a radiologist. What does my day look like? Right? I do I go into a room? Do I sign in? What do I do? Or do I use Starlink?
I'll start with sort of the fundamental premise of what that results in. It results in competition in software world, and competition, hopefully along axes that actually confer value to the industry. Because as an example, if you're going to sign any contract that ties any money to doing anything, it is likely because you cannot find an already existing and better priced option in the market. And so by almost implicit definition, anything that a practice would sign even de minimis dollars to has to be something that they would want to see exist in the world. And there's a reason for that. And the reason behind that is what's investable, even more than just the piece of paper itself. I say this with the most love and respect for physicians. I'm going to dedicate my life to being of service to help build tools so radiologists can practice medicine better. Like that is my highest calling. That is who I am at my highest aspiration. But like, if you call a radiologist or you call a physician generally and you say, imagine I had just cured cancer, what does that mean for the world? A physician's job is to contemplate all of the possible side effects of that particular thing. And so you'll hear, well, what would that mean for research, for other kinds of diseases? Because so much fundraising occurs as a result. You get a litany of things that may have sounded like, instead of, well, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, there were more words being said. And so when VCs call radiologists to do references on things that matter, the answer that matters is embedded in what is more likely than not an accurate but holistic assessment of what the secondary and tertiary impacts of
Cameron,
that.
I'm gonna bring you back,
Yeah.
and to the question, like, let's say from Sirona's perspective, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's say, Sirona 5, 7, 10 years down the line, I am a Sirona customer. What
Yeah.
does my day look like? Like, how many cases am I reporting? How much money am I making? How many patients am I impacting?
Yeah.
What
Yeah. Well, and that's
what
it. And so to bring that all back around to this point, effectively, if you have greater competition, you're going to get more value for a lower cost. And so what that means on a 10-year basis for radiology practices is today, there are a defined number of vendors, and the cost structure for radiology IT is still largely inspired by what the cost of physical film was some time ago. And so I think what you start to get are AI-powered solutions that see what competition has meant in the rest of the software world in radiology, which is the cost of storage goes to nothing, and the cost or the dollars attributed to the value created with compute go up dramatically. And so what I think that means is you see at least a doubling of clinician efficiency, not because of the impact of any one specific thing like detecting a nodule or do it, but the breadth of what AI can accomplish. And I think the overwhelming majority of paperwork or administrative burden or other things of this nature, including but not limited to the act of analyzing and retrieving information from the clinical record, all of that starts to happen in a far more intelligent fashion. And I think you have an ecosystem that looks somewhat similar to what it does today. You have the IT vendors like us, you've got the AI platforms, you've got the AI algorithms, you've got an ecosystem. But that starts to look like what enterprise software everywhere else in the world does, which is companies like yours and like Sirona and like all the AI vendors in the space working in a collaborative fashion versus an anti-competitive closed ecosystem manner. And I don't think that that's a function of the culture of these organizations, but cloud technology and modern technology is far more architected specifically to allow for horizontal platform integration in a way that means more competition, and also more cooperation between entities that are competing than you see today.
The number of such entities, Cameron, is going to increase or decrease?
Say that one more time. I'm not sure. I didn't hear you.
The number of such entities, whether it's the PACS companies, whether it's AI platforms, whether it's the AI developers, like if you gaze like strategically 5, 7, 10 years down the line, is that number going to be, is it going to be like a 1,000 companies with like three winners and, a tail, or is it going to be just the three winners? Is it going to be like 10,000 or like each radiologist has their own PACS? What do you think?
No, I think the answer is what is likely to happen is like what we've seen, I think, in the development of most sort of industries of technology over time, which is that the platform layer will tend towards 2 to 3 to 4 different options. Like you got Mac, you got PC, you got Linux, like you got a handful of operating systems, and those things need to be bulletproof. So I think you'll have a small number of those, but I think that doesn't necessarily say something about the value that they capture. Windows isn't worth anything. It's the machines that they run on now that are. I think then you'll have a number of different, sort of middleware or aggregation businesses, platform businesses. And I think you'll have hopefully a great many applications businesses. And I think that that's not dissimilar from, as an example, the development of the mobile economy or any of the new compute platforms we've seen. A small number of platform layers, a small number of sort of front doors to the AI ecosystem, and then a large number of AI developers. And I think the value will be evenly distributed, roughly speaking, a third, a third, a third between those three layers.
Got it. Got it. Cool. So we do have a question, Cameron, pretty interesting
Yeah.
question coming from pretty evident why the person doesn't want to disclose who they are. Would Sirona be willing to sell its reporter to any of the major industry giants like Siemens, Philips, etc.? If not, then why not?
Yeah. If I interpret the question to mean, would we sell the technology? The business is not for sale. So, however, if I interpret the question to mean what I think it means, which is, would we be willing to license that technology? Yeah. We are going to have a next generation reporting launch event, probably in February or March of this coming year. We are presently selling our reporter as a standalone capability set to people who are interested in doing so, large private practices, technically, traditionally speaking. We may be willing to distribute through other people. There's no reason we wouldn't. What I will say is we have one platform. That platform ingests DICOM and HL7 and ingests all the different data physicians need, and then you can use it however you want. And so what we mean by that is our reporting experience is made better because, in part, we're able to ingest pixel data and use other AI and sort of data normalization techniques that we have to do that. We would distribute, potentially in partnership with others. There's no reason we wouldn't. We have not done up until this point. But selling reporting as a standalone feature set for practices who are looking to modernize is something we are actively doing now and are going to be launching in a more formal program, imminently.
No, that's pretty cool, and I guess that's good to know for folks on the lookout for such solutions. That there is the possibility uh, of getting access to the Sirona reporting platform through their existing PACS vendor, as opposed to have a new contract and a new everything. So I think that's pretty cool. I'd love to hear from you, Cameron. I'm sure there's a lot of youngsters who generally, well, you're young yourself, but yeah, bunch of people building stuff that come to you for advice. Very specifically, what as a non clinician, what is the guidance you would give to clinicians who are contemplating entering our industry? And by our industry, if we could just mean like radiology AI. So let's say there's a young
Yeah.
25-30-year-old clinician contemplating coming into the radiology AI industry. What are like a couple of pieces of advice you would give them?
Yeah. There is no way to build something from scratch without accumulating a very material amount of risk. And what I mean by that is to say, I think by nature, there is a desire, I think, embedded in the fundamental premise of the way of modern medicine that says do no harm. And in many ways, that means don't take unnecessary risks. And that is absolutely the way medicine should be practiced. However, in building technology companies, it is just as hard to build a bad business as it is to build a great one. And it is actually just as risky to build a business with a small scope as it is to build a business with a larger scope. This doesn't mean take a swing that's as like ridiculous as the one we took. I mean, this almost killed me on 1,500 different occasions, like re-architecting the entire IT stack from scratch. But I mean, I think by nature, when people think sort of a priori, what is the business going to do? What is our purpose? What is our first product? I think it is most often the case, especially with physician founders or physician leaders, that people will start with what is the intended impact and will slowly walk their way back to a minimum viable product that they think is going to be easier or less risky to build and actually just results in a much narrower business. And so what I would say is the hard part about starting a company is not building the initial product. The hard part is not raising the money. The hard part is the people. And that is a constant, regardless of whether or not you're building something that is, ultra impossibly ambitious or exceptionally practical. In fact, the people problems become harder the more practical your idea is, because it is harder to recruit people based off of this is the grand vision. And so what I would say is, honestly, it is a disservice to this industry that folks like me are in positions like this, because it should be physicians who are leading every business everywhere. But in order to do and take some of these more large scale calculated venture funded risks, clinicians, sort of traditionally the businesses that they've tended to take, focus more on point solutions and narrow applications and solution areas rather than platforms. And I would just, this is maybe not advice, but this is perhaps me projecting my own personal desire. I would love for there to be more folks like you, Vidor, who are both a physician and also taking platform level swings, because I think it would result in more valuable and viable platform businesses. And so, so I did not mean to turn that answer into a plug for you, my good friend, but I do think it is a rare combination of attributes.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a bunch of questions coming in. Let's try to power through them quickly, Cam. There has been a lot of great feedback on the hanging protocol used by Sirona.
Yeah.
How did Sirona approach the existing gaps and make it better?
With all problems that we try to solve with AI, we start with the first principles question, which is, why does this not work today? And if the answer doesn't involve something that only Sirona can really build, then we don't. Meaning we would partner or we would not build it ourselves. The problem with the hanging protocols, problem broadly speaking, is that you have effectively two ways people try to solve it today: direct string matching and some fuzzy string matching, which is has proven to be ineffective. But more importantly than ineffective, it's brittle. And so if you're in a private practice setting and you're adding in new sites, it breaks. You got to go back in and fix it, and it's a disaster. And so what we started with was, what is the ultimate solution that's required here? And what it really required us to solve was a more fundamental problem that exists in radiology, which is the data heterogeneity problem. So we started by building an ontology. That took us 4 years, and some people who are way smarter than I am. I mean, the ontology lead we have on our team, Dr. Jeff Lerman, is one of the smartest human beings I've ever met. And it took 4 years with no product value conferred to build that ontology, and then the series and study classifier layer on top of that would allow for that ultimate solution. So the short answer is the ontology powering a knowledge graph, powering a data normalization engine that we created, but we had to take a 5-year view of architecting that solution. And it's one of the things in the product that I'm most proud of.
It's fairly evident from your voice, Cameron, and it's amazing. Next is from Khalid Yunus, well-known guy in the sim circles, in the informatics circles. Thanks, Khalid, for your question. He says, I read through it. Essentially, what's the plan for vision language models, right?
Yeah.
Are you integrating them? Are you thinking about them? Do you ignore them? What's your take?
I'll give my take, but I'll start with the regulatory take, which is God bless anyone who's going to take these things to the FDA. So I think part of the benefit of being a platform, and not to be flippant, is we care deeply about these models being integrated into the workflow. I have no earthly idea how the FDA is going to process some of this. So this is now just complete and total supposition. Here's how we think about vision and language, respectively. Radiology is a visual specialty that is practiced largely through speech. And so our first principles sort of thesis from the beginning of the business was that we had to have the images.
Can you say that again, Cameron?
Yeah.
Radiology is a
It,
visual.
it is a visual specialty, but it is implemented principally through speech.
Yeah.
And so what that means is the product is it's words on a piece of paper, but doctors wouldn't say it's words on a piece of paper. They would say, I dictate it, and our reporting platform's terrible and the words are wrong. It's like the speech is the product. The words that you speak are the product. And so the point there being, you could argue that radiology is, although this is, may come off as both diminutizing and also reductionist in a way that's absurd, but it is a data compression function of taking 2.5, or 3-dimensional data or 4D data and compressing it down through speech into a 1-dimensional text document. So it's a data compression function. And in that context, where the point is the way that the sort of practice is best practiced is by making sure physicians have their eyes on images the whole time and they're able to put words on paper with a limited amount of effort. Right now, speech can only make one action. It can only put words in a report. And what vision sort of models, multimodal models generally allow for, yes, there's going to be powerful clinical and diagnostic applications, but the thing that we're most excited about, and have been for 6 years as we've been building this platform, is the ability for speech to drive all actions that a radiologist would take. And not all actions like click on a length tool or like do one thing or click another thing, but to actually go and interrogate a record, to help you practice without having to sift through the haystack, to just say, hand me a needle. And I think no surgeon would ever walk into the OR without a support staff around them. They would be so much less efficient so as to be dangerous for the patient. And I suspect that we'll look back on this moment technologically and say that the sort of vision language moment, multimodal moment, was in large sense, radiologists doing the equivalent of surgery in an OR without a support staff around them. So we're incredibly excited about what this will mean.
That's kind of beautifully put. Sorry, we're at time. There's a couple of other questions we've got. We'll answer them on our. We have a LinkedIn group, Cameron, where we'll get after you to answer those questions there. But thank you for joining. I think I look forward to the day where speech as a method of communication with the Sirona system is replaced by Neuralink. You never.
I think eye tracking is going to come sooner than you think. That technology
Oh
is
yeah, for sure. No, I think that is 100%. I have no doubt. And if you can go down to, we'll talk. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. We try to keep this on time always, but and thanks, Cam. This means the world. And thank you. See you next week, same time, different link though.
Thanks, everybody.